can you show us how to set up a Gann chart? Absolutely. Good question. All right, so there are a number of ways to create a Gann chart. Probably the easiest and the one that you should learn first is how to square a range. So I need a brand. We'll use Bitcoin for. No, you know what? Not Bitcoin's kind of hard to do this on, because it's so new. So it's hard to. Well, now we could use Bitcoin. That's fine. Yeah, we can use Bitcoin. So we use Bitcoin's chart. We need a brand new chart though. And this is being recorded, so if you get lost or if it's you want to reference it later, you can watch this recording. And here's what we want to do. We want to go to a daily chart. All right? Very important that we go to a daily chart. And I'm using Coinbase for this. I'm using the Bitcoin dollar Coinbase pair. Okay? First thing you want to do, and this doesn't matter what kind of, doesn't matter if this is Bitcoin or whatever. You want to identify the first two things. You want to identify where the all-time low is and the all-time high. So for Bitcoin, the all-time high is over here. It's to the right of the all-time low. So the all-time low on Coinbase is sitting down here, where the all-time high is over here. If we were looking at something like the dollar yen, where we would see the all-time high is in the past and the all-time low is down here, that'd be a different chart. We'd be squaring the range of a high to a low instead of a low to a high. So in Bitcoin, that's what we're gonna be squaring, is that we're squaring the range of a low from a low to a high. Why is this so slow and choppy? This is just weird. Okay, next thing we want to do is we want to get the horizontal line. Doesn't matter what color it is, and we want to put it right on the all-time high. I'm going to make it thinner because it's more accurate. Now, if you're wondering how do you get it to kind of stick on there, if you use the magnet mode, this icon here on the left of my screen, or I've got my cursor on it, magnet mode will put it near the high or the low. So here it'll kind of automatically throw it onto the high. It's a very nice little trick. Now I've got that done. Now, this is a very important part. This is the part you do not want to F up, or you will ruin everything. You're going to right click on the screen and go to properties. And we need to go to scales. And we have to square the chart. Squaring the chart, it doesn't matter actually what the ratio is when you square it, as long as when you're applying the square, you keep it that way until you're done putting the square on there. So, you know, in some instruments, you know, you can go you can use one where you go 1 unit of price equals 1 unit of time. Sometimes you have to do 20 units of time for 20 units of price, or 1 unit of price. We want to get it to where, you know, depending on your screen, you know, you want to get it to where it's going to be as square as possible. So, because if we do it with a 1, this is just not going to work out at all. It's way too congested. We could do it at 10 maybe. Still a little too tight, but probably 100 is, oh, that's way too much too. No, we don't want 100. 50. 50 is probably okay. Yeah, we could do 50. I forgot what I did with the one on my Bitcoin. So now this is going to, gosh, this is actually, well, we can do it. So if you see the all-time low over here, it's on the very bottom. There's kind of this little nipple hanging out here, for lack of a better description. That's the lowest low that we have on this chart. And what I'm going to want to do is get the Gann Square fixed. All right, the Gann Square fixed. Very important to get the Gann Square fixed. And I'm going to put it on the low there. And, you know, depending on how good or bad your eyes are, you can see that, you know, you don't have to put it right on there with the cursor. It'll just the magnet will just kind of drag it to it. Now I'm on the low. I'm going to click once. I'm going to move my mouse until this green middle line here, this diagonal line, that's the 45-degree angle, until that intersects with the horizontal line. Now, while you're doing all this, do not scroll. You will screw up the square. Okay? Don't scroll at all. Don't scroll in or out. You have to maintain this until we get the actual square down, okay? So I've got that square on there. The next thing I need to do is I need to go back up to that same toolbar where I got the Gann Square fixed. And now I want to go to the Gann Box. Now the Gann Box is just a name. It's not... Gann Box is just kind of a name for any square that Gann used. So Gann Box, I'm going to put it at the same place I started. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this so that it follows the 45-degree angle until we intersect with that horizontal line, okay? And then once I have that done, I just click and I have the square there, all right? Then I can delete the bigger square there. I don't need that anymore. Okay? Now all I have to do, and now this is where you can, if you want to right click on your screen and go to price scale, you can go back to auto scale. That's fine. Now all I need to do is I need to clone or copy this, and I'm just going to slide them so that they are on top of one another. All right. So I'm going to keep doing that. Clone. All right, and I'm going to clone it again. And there's the square on the chart. Okay, now your square, this is the fascinating thing about Gann squares, is that they're just fractals. All right, like they're fractals. You can actually, I mean, if you wanted to, you could take the, you could double the size of the squares if you wanted to. I mean, you would have to put a square above, diagonal and to the right of it. You could create a large square like that if you wanted. And in some instruments, you have to do that because you just won't be able to trade on them. So anyways, I've got this on the daily. Sometimes the daily is not a very good chart to look at because the candlesticks, they float inside and out the angles quite a bit. Sometimes you got to bring it down to the 4 hour, the hourly. But, you know, depending on how your square is set, you can see that prices like to follow angles. Prices like to trade in the angles. They like to trade in the various geometric shapes that form around these angles. You can tell that it kind of gives you an idea of a trading range around them. Like we have this head and shoulders pattern here, but we also know that there was a break of that before the neckline was broken because of this angle here. So, you know, this is just an example of how to create that kind of a square. Now, the other part of, okay, also I'm gonna mention this because your Gann box probably doesn't look like this, because by default it looks like this. So to fix this is very easy. You double click on it or you right click on it, and we see all this stuff in here. These two shaded lines where you can adjust the opacity of that. Just turn those all the way over to the right and select angles. And then there's all the angles. Now, the issue with Tradingview's Gann box is that it uses only Fibonacci ratios of time and price, where Gann used Gann had different, I mean, the angular nature is shared very much with the Fibonacci levels. Gann's angles that he used are very much, I mean, they might as well be, they're in the same realm as naturally occurring Fibonacci sequences. So that's what we see here. But the time cycles, I would get rid of them except for the 50% one, because you're not going to need those. And one other thing, I don't think I've ever mentioned this in Forex Lens, and I don't think I've ever mentioned it in, well, no, I have in our Forex Lens group. I know I've never mentioned this in our crypto room, is the time cycles. And I'm going to give you one right now. This is called the law of vibration. This is something that Gann, he wrote about this, and he didn't really, he purposely kind of made it difficult to get. But there's a guy named Tony Plummer who wrote a book called The Law of Vibration, and it is a mind bender, man. I tell you what, it is out there. But he talks about the law of vibration and really talking about a pattern that is constant and consistent in everything. But what I'm referencing is the time cycle. So how you apply the law of vibration is you identify a major swing high or swing low. So for instance, the all-time high right here is at 19,800 and whatever it is. We start the day after that. Okay, so the next day I put a horizontal line there. I like to color that blue. I'll make it thicker so you can see it. All right. Now we want to measure out a period of days. The law of vibration is a 192-day cycle. All right. The law of vibration goes for 192 days. All right. Now, is it a coincidence that there was a major swing low found at the beginning and the end of a new time cycle in the 192-day law of vibration? No, that's not a coincidence. Further, we will divide this by every 24 days. So halfway in between 192 is 96. And then I color these lines. The middle line light blue, and I don't make them as thick. That's just, you can do whatever you want to do, but that's what I do. And then, I actually just, a lot of times now, I just put in the red vertical, the 48-day rotations. 48 days, this is red. So every 24 days there's a behavior given to those days, right? So where you see the exact middle of that time cycle is where you have this acts as a resistance in time to the trend in force, all right? And then the red areas are also their pivots in time. So these areas themselves, any red horizontal or red vertical levels indicate a source of resistance to the trend in force. So when you've got a pivot coming in, a vertical pivot like this, 48 days after the beginning of the 192-day cycle, and then 48 days before the end of that cycle, the beginning of a new one. Whenever you see this horizontal bar and the market is trending up to it, sometime before or after, you have an extremely high probability of price falling or rising just in the counter of that move. Okay? This doesn't mean you're always going to see long-term trend changes, but it does mean that you have a very high probability of price moving in the opposite direction, especially if volume is approaching that zone. And so I think for a lot of people, when they've tried trading and they're trading only price, you're only getting half of the market when you do that. Market geometry, these lines, these angles, this is going to seem weird, but and I hate to say it because I hate moving averages, but these angles are really not they are like support and resistance in that price treats them like that, but what they really are is their levels of momentum. That's what in the Gann box or a Gann square, these diagonal lines represent momentum. And so when something is it is considered, price and time are considered to be an equilibrium in square when they're trading along one of the 45s. Okay, well, as long as price is trading up a 45, that means it's trading in equilibrium. When prices are trading way above the 45, that means they have a high probability of snapping back down to that 45. And when prices are trading well below that 45, they have a high probability of trading up to it. Okay? So as we're looking at this new square we drew, we can see that we are trading below this 45, and we haven't had a responsive selling. And I mean, how many days are we into this? I need to go to 48 days. Well, beam me up, Mr. Scotty. I'm going to say we reverse around here. What was the trend coming down to this red horizontal pivot in time? Down. I'm going to say we move back up. All right? That's what I'm saying. Now, depending on how you squared your chart, and depending on how what the number was that you squared it, yours may not look the same. I know that mine does. Like in the square of, like this is these charts. This is called a square of 144. It's a different form of a square, because some markets are more sensitive, like Bitcoin, for example, I have found is more sensitive to this kind of a square than it is to squaring a range. But squaring a range, I think is, I mean, I trade futures and Forex and cryptos. The square of a range is very effective in Forex, and I found it to be very effective in equity futures. But the square of 144 seems to be more accurate for Bitcoin, at least. And I was trying another square. It's a square of 52. Square 52 is another one this is the most recent one that I've worked on. And I think Bitcoin is pretty sensitive to this one as well, but not as sensitive as that 144. So yeah, Bitcoin's right up against this 45-degree angle. So yeah, any questions on this? I do want to go over all the ways to square these, because this has taken me, there is no class for this, by the way, to learn how to do these. Even in the Chartered Market Technicians material, there is nothing on how to apply Gann's market geometry to your charts. There is nothing there's no class on to learn how to use a square of 9, or how to apply financial astrological phenomena onto your charts. You know, this is what I'm talking about is just things that I've learned through my years of studying Gann and applying it and trading it and testing it on my own, training it on my own. If you're a huge Gann fanatic, I'm not advertising this or anything. I'm just, and I don't get borderline wizardry. Yes, it is. When I first started, I'm going way over my time here, but when I first started squaring ranges, I remember I think I was reading Michael Jenkins's book on squaring ranges. When I first did that with the euro dollar, I was like, I got chills. I'm not kidding. I straight up nerd raged chills, because I was like, this is just as fucking crazy. This can't be like this. This can't be this easy, is it? Well, holy cow, it is. I mean, if you apply some time cycles, market geometry, and then some oscillators, you find a rather, I have found a surprising amount of winning trades. The market geometry, at least the various squares that Gann would use, that was like what was missing for me. I mean, that's kind of like what put it all together. And now I can't trade without it, because it's um, like if trading is a road trip and you know you have to get to a certain destination, then trading without Gann's geometry is kind of like driving blind without using Google Maps. Um, at least with the market geometry, you get an idea of the path something may take and the range that it would be trading in, and it's not in perfect horizontal levels of support and resistance. It's not it is definitely not something that a lot of traders use. And Gann is it takes years to learn, and then it takes a whole lot of balls to want to actually try and use it in your trading. But I mean, it's hard to learn, because there's not a lot of stuff out there or people that use it regularly. But I do. So, and I know that people are. I found a lot of people are very interested in it, and people that I've talked to have used it with a lot of success. And I think that I think it's something better than moving averages and Bollinger Bands. By the way, I hate moving averages. I think they are the devil. I think that a lot of people learn moving averages, and anyways, let's see, it's 2:08. Kind of got a little out there, but tomorrow, depending what the market is doing, why don't we reserve like a half of the session, or use half hour or 15 minutes of the session on the Gann geometry. And so, Lewis, if you're back here tomorrow, if you have some questions about it, I would love to answer those. And some other people, if you have questions too, if you're watching the recording of this right now and you have applied this, if you have questions, come back tomorrow, ask them. And I'm going to say, maybe look at a different chart to try and apply this market geometry. Okay, use it on the euro or the S&P 500, or excuse me, anything else. Bitcoin's hard to square because it's got such a funky chart. Anyways,